Hi, Paula. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me. It's a real honor and privilege.
Hey, it's lovely to meet you too.
So, Paula Namusiitwa, you are based in Uganda, born and raised there. How is you've been in the patent space for about 7 years now, very active. How is the current COVID-19 situation affecting IP in general in Uganda, and which are the major changes you've seen in the last few months?
Basically, the COVID-19 has impacted the IP industry tremendously in so many different ways, both in terms of what has happened and what hasn't happened and what had to stop happening. So, for instance, we had the IP office in the first weeks of having our first case back in March, and it had to close down for temporarily as they put in place measures to control the spread of the coronavirus. So, at a certain point, we were not able to file IP matters, IP applications, or tend to IP matters. But one of the changes that has really happened is that they acted really fast, and they put in place an e-service platform. It's an email platform. It's not perfect, but it does help because at the moment we are still able to file applications, we're able to file oppositions. However, being being able to file and having the matter acted on is the problem, because at the moment of the restrictions is we are not allowed to private cars and public cars are also not allowed to move, which has restricted our movement. It has also restricted the IP office's movement. So actions are moving slow. Timelines at the moment we're uncertain. The IP office has not pronounced itself on timelines. Matters that had, let's say, 30 days or 60 days in which to oppose, or actions that had to be taken, they have been silent on that. And so we're in a space where we don't know if extensions are going to be granted. I believe at some point it will just be an individual basis to petition the IP office if your matter run out of time. We've also had issues on enforcement, IP enforcement. Our courts closed down and are only open to a very limited extent and for only urgent matters. So at the moment, enforcing IP is a no-go. And for the most part of our lockdown, most lawyers actually were not allowed to work. Were not regarded as essential workers. That only changed in the past week or so. But even then, the courts are closed. The courts are closed off to the public. So IP enforcements are very limited. And in this space, it has allowed IP infringement to take place because there is no enforcement to happen. You can only watch and take note of infringements that are happening. We also have counterfeits happening, going around, especially the requirement of disinfectants, requirement of masks, things that have become necessities during the lockdown have impacted so much and have fueled IP infringement in the country. On the bright side, we've also seen a lot of innovation happening in Uganda during the past 6 or so weeks. We've had Macquarie University coming up with a COVID-19 test. We've also seen them come up with a ventilator to treat COVID-19 patients. We've seen also a lot of companies are learning how to move from paper to digital.
Can you tell us a little bit more? You had mentioned in regards to the Kia Motors dealing with electric buses there in Uganda. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Oh yes, so still during this lockdown, Kia Motors they've been working on having an electric bus for a good number of years now, and last week they were able to display 2 of their buses that have been assembled from Uganda. The buses are electric. They use batteries that are chargeable, and I think each battery charge can go for a good 300 kilometers before it requires any additional charging. The buses have a mileage of 900,000 kilometers, unlike the normal diesel and petrol cars. And they've made them really automatic. They've put sanitizers in there. They've made provisions for the disabled persons to use. They're spacious. And 90% of the resources were locally sourced from Uganda, which is quite interesting. So Kira Motors has been at the forefront of innovation in Uganda, from the ventilator that has been developed and currently going through the testing, and now to 2 buses that we believe are going to transform our transport industry, because there is a debate on moving from relying on the matatus, the taxis, to having more buses doing the city routes there.
So Paula, Uganda is not known very much of foreign of outside innovation coming and protecting their rights in Uganda. What would you say, which industries and technologies do you say may be a good business opportunity in Uganda for other companies, for corporations around the world to think, hey, maybe I should protect my rights in Uganda and make it a market there?
Okay, so I would say the consumer industry in Uganda, consumer products. If you're looking at electronics, we're looking at electronics, things like flat irons, blenders, different home electronics, and consumer products are some of the things that are used the most in Uganda. But then they also have the biggest number of counterfeiting happening in Uganda. And a lot of owners of big brands or patents do not really see the need to protect in Uganda. And yet we have a problem of counterfeits. We have a problem of magnitude of counterfeits of electronics that are substandard coming into the country. And so there are so many opportunities, and Uganda being a virgin market, the opportunities are so big that any person that has an innovation or a patent or a trademark should indeed come into Uganda and protect and protect their intellectual property here, and not just to protect, but also to make available some of these products, because sometimes you're going to get counterfeit products of a particular brand that are even more costly than the actual product, the genuine product. So these are all opportunities for patent and trademark owners to come into Uganda, and not only to protect, but to also exploit their products. Consumer products are a big one in Uganda, and they will definitely keep moving. And then of course our country is majorly agricultural, so agricultural innovations would thrive in Uganda. So that is also a very interesting area that can be pursued. The fact that it's an agricultural country, and we are looking at innovating and improving and mechanizing agriculture in Uganda. So that is also a very big opportunity for innovators and patent owners to come into Uganda and exploit.
So Paula, have you seen, because there's counterfeiting and other issues, has the government taken a stand there? And like, would you say there would be more protection moving forward? Like, I know there's a lot of advances being made, but do you see this coming into play a little bit more, that companies could feel a little bit safer going into business in Uganda?
In light of the COVID-19, I won't really say that the government has been focusing on protecting intellectual property during this season. However, prior to COVID-19, the government has been taking tremendous steps towards protection and enforcement of intellectual property assets in Uganda. So while there could have been a setback during this season, which is pretty much due to the fact that there's a lockdown, services are closed, government offices are closed, there's been room for people to take advantage of the situation. However, going forward, I believe once we're back on track and everything is working, there should be no worry for intellectual property owners about in fact, right now what most intellectual property owners should be doing is taking note of infringements that are happening, so that once courts are open, once the IP office is fully functional, you can still come up and enforce your rights in Uganda, and they'll still be enforced.
So, Paula, you're the managing partner at ABNO Advocates, the director of IPC, director of TI/SEI, a secretary, the head of the Traditional Knowledge Committee with a lot of credentials, one of only 50 professionals patent experts in Uganda. What would you say moving forward after this COVID-19? What should the world expect from the patent offices in Uganda?
What they should really expect a lot of innovation coming out of Uganda. And that's something that COVID-19 has really taught us, to innovate. So they should expect a lot of innovation coming out of Uganda. And some of this innovation may be genuine, some of it might be an infringement. We can't really know, because if you do not protect your patents in Uganda, then there is absolutely nothing that we can do to protect your products, to protect your services in Uganda. So going forward, expect a lot of innovation coming out of Uganda, out of Ugandan businesses. Expect a lot of businesses moving from paper to digital. Expect a lot of products coming out, because I believe the future is intellectual property, and COVID-19 has showed us that everything that has been essential in this season has a backbone in intellectual property. Everything from ventilators to tests, it's all, we're looking at patents, we're looking at industrial designs, we're looking at trademarks. So that has taught us that at the end of the day, you've got to get on board and innovate, and also put yourself into spaces that are going to stay relevant, even in the middle of the pandemic. So expect a lot of innovation coming out of Uganda, and that protecting patents, in protecting even other aspects of intellectual property in Uganda. Maybe infringement, some may not, but we can't know until you've protected your patent in Uganda.